Yaoguang has finally arrived in Honkai Star Rail after that long delay. I know, I've already talked about Yaoguang before, and yeah, I said some pretty harsh things about her. And about Sparksy too. But now that she's actually out, it's time to revisit the discussion with a more objective perspective. Quick disclaimer, this video will still include a lot of my personal opinions about Yaoguang and her performance, so as always, take everything here with a grain of salt. With that said, enough talking. Let's dive in and break down Yaoguang. So Yaoguang is a physical elation support character. Yes, very physical. Her main role is exactly what you'd expect, supporting elation teams. And for now, that's about the full picture, because currently the only other dedicated elation unit we have is Sparksy. So how does Yaoguang actually support the elation team? It's pretty straightforward. Yaoguang mainly contributes through three core functions: increasing party elation damage via her skill, dealing additional elation damage whenever your team attacks through her talent, and finally, instantly triggering AHA with her ultimate. These three mechanics are essentially her bread and butter, and we'll break each of them down in detail later. But at a high level, her gameplay is very simple. You use Yaoguang's skill, you use her ultimate, and you're basically done. No need to overcomplicate things, at least for now. Now let's start with Yaoguang's skill. When used, she deploys a zone that lasts for 3 turns. You can think of it somewhat like Ronmei's ultimate field. While the zone is active, it increases all allies' elation damage by up to 20% at max level. And right now, this is actually the only dedicated elation damage buff in the entire game. On top of that, every time Yaoguang uses her skill or basic attack, she gains 3 punchline stacks. Now, I'll be honest, on paper, this skill looks pretty good, but in the current meta, it feels a bit underwhelming. Why? Because there are very few characters who can actually benefit from elation damage buffs right now. Basically just Sparksy. That said, if we're looking at future elation teams, then yes, you could absolutely argue that Yaoguang is the best elation support available. At least for now. Next up, Yaoguang's ultimate. It's actually very simple once you break it down. When Yaoguang activates her ultimate, she immediately gains 5 punchline. Right after that, she triggers an AHA instant. This special AHA instant comes with a fixed 20 punchline value, which effectively gives all your elation characters an immediate boost before the regular AHA cycle. And importantly, it does not consume AHA's own punchline pool. Now, I'll be honest, this can sound confusing at first, so here's the easiest way to think about it. Treat the normal AHA instant and Yaoguang's ultimate AHA instant as 2 separate triggers. In practical terms, if your team would normally activate, say, 2 AHA instants in one cycle, Yaoguang's ultimate basically gives you 1 extra activation on top of that. After the AHA instant triggers, it will naturally activate all elation characters' follow-up effects, and only after that does Yaoguang apply her team buff, 20% all-type res pen for 3 turns. And honestly, this res pen is what makes her ultimate broadly useful right now. The rest of the effects are very specifically designed for elation teams, so their true value will only fully shine once we get more elation units in the roster. But for now, that's the core of how Yaoguang's ultimate works. Earlier, I mentioned elation skills, so let's briefly talk about Yaoguang's elation skill. As a reminder, this skill triggers after AHA instant, so keep that thing in mind. When Yaoguang's elation skill activates, she first applies a debuff to all enemies called Woe Whisper. Enemies affected by Woe Whisper take 16% increased damage, which is a solid team-wide amplification effect. On top of applying the debuff, Yaoguang also deals damage herself. She hits all enemies for 100% physical elation damage, and then follows up with 5 additional hits of 20% physical elation damage to a random enemy. In single target scenarios, like against a boss, those extra hits all stack onto the same target. That brings the total to roughly 200% physical elation damage. And honestly, for a support unit, that's pretty respectable damage. Next up, let's talk about Yaoguang's talent. First, there's one very important thing to keep in mind. Based on what we've seen from both Sparksy and Yaoguang, their talent effects only activate when they have the certified banger state, which all elation units gain after an AHA instant. So always remember, no AHA instant, no full talent value. Now, when Yaoguang has certified banger, her talent provides 2 main effects. Every time an ally attacks, Yaoguang deals 1 additional instance of 20% elation damage to a random hit target. If that ally's attack consumes a skill point, the talent triggers one more additional instance of 20% elation damage. In simple terms, a normal attack will produce one 20% elation damage instance, while a skill point consuming attack will produce 2 instances of 20% elation damage. There is also an important scaling mechanic. Whenever this bonus elation damage triggers, if the attacker's elation stat is lower than Yaoguang's, the damage will instead scale based on Yaoguang's elation. This helps ensure the bonus damage stays optimized even when she is supporting weaker elation scalers. Personally, I like to compare this effect to Triby's E1 true damage. Right now, Triby is clearly stronger in that specific role. However, we don't know what the future holds. If we eventually get an elation DPS that heavily scales with elation damage, Yaoguang's talent could become significantly more valuable. So for the current patch, it's solid, but very much future dependent. As for Yaoguang's technique, there honestly isn't much to talk about. Simply put, if you use it at the start of battle, it automatically triggers Yaoguang's skill. And realistically, that doesn't do much unless you're actually running her in an elation team. At best, it helps you ramp toward Yaoguang's ultimate a bit faster since you get her zone up immediately, but outside of proper elation setups, the impact is pretty minimal. So for now, this is more of a nice convenience tool rather than a game-changing part of her kit. Now that we've covered Yaoguang's base kit, let's talk about her traces. Starting with A2. If Yaoguang reaches 120 speed or higher, she gains 30% elation. On top of that, for every 1 speed above 120, she gains an additional 1% elation, up to a maximum of 200 excess speed. In theory, that cap would require 320 speed, which is obviously impossible in practice. Realistically, most players will aim for a hyperspeed setup around 160 speed, which is very achievable. If you push toward 180 speed for potential 3 turns per cycle, you're already getting around 110% bonus elation, which is quite substantial. Moving on to A4. This trace gives Yaoguang 60% critical damage, which is huge. Because of this, you can focus your substats more heavily on crit rate and speed. On top of that, Yaoguang recovers 1 skill point every time she triggers her Elation Skill. Between her ultimate and normal AHA instance, this effectively guarantees 2 free skill points in most rotations, which is very valuable for team economy. Finally, we have A6. This trace extends Yaoguang's certified banger duration from 2 turns to 3 turns after an AHA instant. Right now, I'll be honest, this trace doesn't feel extremely impactful. However, once a full Elation team becomes available in the future, this extended uptime could become much more relevant. So for now, it's somewhat situational, but potentially future-proof. Alright, to summarize Yaoguang's kit. First, she enables additional AHA instance through her ultimate, which makes her a fairly strong punchline generator, especially if you can supply her with enough energy regeneration. Second, Yaoguang provides meaningful team-wide damage amplification. She grants all-type res pen, increases overall damage through her ultimate and elation effects, and also contributes extra hit instances. Speaking of extra damage, her talent adds additional damage procs to enemies, somewhat similar to Triby E1. The key difference is that Yaoguang's bonus damage scales with elation damage rather than true damage. She is also somewhat SP positive thanks to her A4 trace. This is actually quite valuable going forward, since elation teams appear to be very SP hungry by design. Another important point is that Yaoguang is currently the only character who buffs team-wide elation damage. However, the downside is obvious. Due to the current lack of strong elation DPS units, the full value of her kit has not fully materialized yet, and will likely depend on future releases. For general usage, especially in non-elation teams, I recommend prioritizing her abilities in this order. Start with the ultimate, then the talent for the additional damage instances, followed by her elation skill, and finally her skill. However, for full elation teams, which don't fully exist yet but may become relevant once Sparksy arrives, you should prioritize Yaoguang's skill at the same level as her ultimate. For speed tuning, there is really only one optimal approach for Yaoguang right now, and that is hyperspeed. You want as much speed as possible, so AHA cycles faster, which in turn allows you to trigger AHA instance more frequently. At the moment, we only have 2 Elation units, Yaoguang and Sparksy, so there isn't much flexibility in speed breakpoint optimization yet. That said, this could definitely change in the future. Once more Elation units are released, alternative setups, such as -1 speed tuning, may become viable. But right now, hyperspeed is clearly her best build. You should aim for at least 160 speed as the minimum baseline. More is always better, but if you're aiming to 0 cycle Memory of Chaos, try to push toward 180 speed to potentially achieve 3 turns in one cycle. This is my current preference, especially since Sparksy isn't fully available yet, and most of my testing has been alongside Archer. Now let's talk about Yaoguang's Eidolons. I'll keep this brief because most of her Eidolon value really shines only in a full Elation team, which frankly we don't fully have yet. And in my opinion, Yaoguang at E0 is already more than sufficient. Right now, the gap between her E0 and E1 in both damage and buffing is nowhere near as dramatic as something like Tribi E0 versus E1. With that in mind, let's go through them quickly. Yaoguang's E1 upgrades the Aha instant triggered by her ultimate from 20 punchline to a fixed 40 punchline. This is particularly valuable for characters like Sparksy, and future Elation DPS, whose damage scales heavily with punchline generation. On top of that, it also adds 20% defense ignore for Elation damage, which is a nice bonus. Her E2 is straightforward. When Yaoguang deploys her zone via skill, all allies gain 12% speed and 12% additional Elation damage. Combined with her base kit, this brings the total Elation damage buff to 32%. Solid, but still very team dependent. E4 further enhances her ultimate value. All Elation skills triggered by the Aha instant from Yaoguang's ultimate will deal 150% of their original damage. It's nice, but honestly not game-breaking in the current environment. At E6, you are basically in whale territory. This Eidolon grants a new buff called Merrymaking by 25%. This is important because the Elation damage formula also scales with Merrymaking, and right now, Yaoguang E6 is the only source of this stat buff. On top of that, her own Elation skill multiplier is increased by 100% of its original value. Very powerful, but extremely expensive. I really want to stress this. Because we don't yet have the full Elation roster, heavily investing in Yaoguang's Eidolons right now is not the wisest move for most players. Personally, I would say you only need E0 for now. Be patient. Wait until we see the true Elation DPS ecosystem. Then you can decide whether further investment is worth it. That said, I know some of you are whales, or even leviathans, and hey, I can't stop you. Pull what you want. But for me, E0 Yaoguang is the sweet spot, at least for now. Yaoguang's signature Lightcone is, once again, her best in slot option. It basically gives her everything she wants: crit rate, crit damage, speed, and energy regeneration. All of these stats work together extremely well, especially when you're trying to reach key speed breakpoints for faster Aha cycling. However, the good news is that you don't actually need it. There is a completely free-to-play alternative, Mushy Shroomy Adventures from the Forgotten Hall shop. It provides solid stats and performs well enough for most players. Right now, we also don't have a 5-star Harmony option from the Herta shop, but I wouldn't be surprised if one appears in the future, maybe during an anniversary update. So for me personally, at this stage of the game, pulling Yaoguang's signature Lightcone is not worth it. From a general purpose perspective, and based on my personal preference, E1 is definitely more valuable than her signature Lightcone. The improved punchline generation alone is a huge deal, and on top of that, the 20% defense ignore is genuinely impactful in real gameplay. Honestly, building speed on Yaoguang isn't that difficult to begin with. Her base speed is already quite solid. That said, if your priority is ease of building and smoother rotations, then yes, Yaoguang's signature Lightcone does pull ahead of E1. So the decision is actually very simple. If you care more about raw team damage and long-term scaling, go with E1. But if you value comfort, consistency, and smoother rotations, then the signature Lightcone is the better pick. Easy. Simple. Alright, Yaoguang's Relic and Plannar setup is actually very straightforward right now. Her best Relic option is the new Diviner of Distant Reach set, since it provides speed, Elation damage, and crit rate. Essentially everything Yaoguang wants in one package. If you're still farming this set, you can temporarily use any speed-focused Relic combinations to help her reach important speed breakpoints. For the Plannar set, the choice is simple. You can run Lushaka if you want to further amplify your main DPS's damage, or choose Von Whack if you prefer smoother turn manipulation and rotation comfort. In terms of target stats, you should aim for at least 160 speed as a baseline, although pushing toward 180 speed is even better if you are trying to optimize for zero cycle setups. After securing your speed, try to reach around 60% crit rate and roughly 150% crit damage to fully stabilize her performance. If you can hit these benchmarks, Yaoguang will function exactly as intended in most team compositions. Now let's talk about the boring part, Yaoguang's teams. At the moment, Yaoguang really only has two main team builds in my view. One is already fully functional, and the other will likely become relevant once Sparksy releases in the second banner. The first is the Archer variant. This team typically consists of Archer, Sparkle, Yaoguang, and one flexible slot based on your preference. Personally, I prefer either Sunday or Dan Heng for that final position. Why does this team work? The answer is simple: Yaoguang's talent. Remember the additional 20% elation damage instance, plus another 20% when skill points are consumed? Archer happens to trigger these conditions repeatedly with his kit. Because of that, this part of Yaoguang's kit currently synergizes best with Archer compared to other available units. The second team is, of course, the Sparksy variant, which would consist of Sparksy, Yaoguang, Sparkle, and Dan Heng. However, since Sparksy is coming in the second half of the banner, and I may not even pull for her, I can't say too much yet. What I can say is that once Sparksy releases, this will likely become Yaoguang's most optimal team for a while. At least until we eventually get a true dedicated Elation DPS. To be completely honest, after testing Yaoguang with Archer, she still doesn't feel particularly impressive, even with all the buffs she provides. Why? Well, the answer is pretty obvious. She was clearly designed to function inside a full Elation team, and right now, that ecosystem simply isn't complete. So the next question naturally becomes, what about with Sparksy? Honestly, my feeling is still the same. Even in a 2-unit Elation setup, Yaoguang's full potential just isn't showing yet. The pieces are there, but the payoff doesn't feel fully realized. I'm also still cautious about her future performance with units like Silverwolf SP and Eva. On paper, her kit suggests strong synergy, but personally, I won't fully believe it until I see the official releases and real gameplay results. Because of that, I've decided to only pull E0 Yaoguang and then wait patiently for the true Elation DPS to arrive. So if you ask me right now, is Yaoguang worth it or is she bait? For me, at the current moment, she leans much closer to bait. It's not that she's bad, it's simply that, due to the lack of supporting Elation units, she isn't game-changing yet, even though her kit clearly points toward a future Elation-focused meta. Of course, if you like her, feel free to pull. I'm not stopping you. But as of patch 4.0, I'm personally not confident enough to recommend her as a must-pull. For now, Yaoguang is not worth the investment. So that's pretty much everything for today's video. What do you think about Yaoguang? Would you pull for her? Or pull her on her rerun? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!